Watch this.
Think about being buried in court for a year, 2 years, having to pay a lawyer every month.
After his bill was buried in the Senate last session, a Nampa lawmaker is trying to bring his anti-SLAPP law back. We'll see what's different this time around. Just when you thought the thought of Greater Idaho might be going away, it could finally be getting some attention in Oregon. At least that's what our closest county across the border is hoping.
There's some people that do wonderful on online school, and that's the virtual schoolhouse. That's great, but my daughter tried that for a year, and she obtained very few credits.
One of West Ada's 6 alternative schools is going an alternative direction. The changes are coming next school year, and parents, they're not happy about it.
Senate Bill 1325 has failed to pass the Senate. It will be retained in the office of the Secretary.
Yes, guess who's back? Back again. SLAPP is back, and if you're so inclined, sure, you can tell a friend. Last year, Senator Brian Lenny took up the cause for a few friends who found themselves being sued for what they said about others in an online feud. The lawsuits were supposed to stop and possibly hold them accountable for their alleged hurtful comments. But those on the receiving end of the subpoenas, well, they saw them as a frivolous legal action trying to suppress and silence free speech. Thus, SLAPP, strategic lawsuits against public participation. But last session, a majority of senators saw Lenny's bill as just a copy-paste bill from the Chicago-based Uniform Law Commission. Copy and paste bills? We don't do that here, do we? Might want to check out that God We Trust bill. By the way, the idea for SLAPP is back. Joe Paris following the topic for us today. Okay, so what's changed? They didn't just not like the idea last year, or is that going to continue?
Well, I think there were lawmakers that really liked the core principles of like preventing frivolous lawsuits, but they didn't particularly love the fashion that the bill was delivered in. So debate against the bill last session, it centered on it possibly being half-baked or maybe not a one-size-fit-all. But the idea as a whole, again, it's popular. Here's the debate from 2024.
Over the many years that I've been in this body, that there's been a lot of resistance to the Uniform Law Commission. So to see that the Uniform Law Commission as model legislation is being brought as the perfect example in this case, I think we've come full circle. Idaho needs an Idaho solution, and we need more time for this.
And other lawmakers expressed similar, I guess, concerns. But a major caveat here, the Senate has a lot of new faces. Senator Lee, who you just heard from, she retired, moved on to a new job. Still, though, a few lawmakers worried that there were deep implications or possibly problems with the law, that the legislation needed to be further developed. So, a year later, here we are again. Here's the new pitch to lawmakers from Senator Lenny from the print hearing earlier this afternoon.
Expedites the process for handling frivolous lawsuits. It sets clear rules for quickly dismissing cases that are baseless. It allows the winning side to recover their legal costs, including attorney fees. Resolves SLAPPs faster and more efficiently.
So Senator Lenny, he mentioned Idaho is one of 15 states that has nothing on the books about these SLAPP laws or not SLAPP laws. And I reached out to the senator from Nampa to ask a few questions, like how is this attempt different or not from last session? And if he thinks there's a better chance this year, kind of wanted to talk through the entire idea like we do here on the 208. The response to my question, I'm busy. Cheers, Brian Lenny, which I get. They are busy. They have a lot of things to do other than talk to reporters. So, Brian, I asked if there was a time for the senator that works for him. I'm sure the fine people in our viewing area that he represents in Nampa would love to hear from their elected leader on this. I mean, it's an interesting idea. Sure. No response, though, so maybe I should have tweeted at him instead. He seems to really like that website. But anyways, the bill was printed. We'll learn more soon, and we'll find out if Senator Lenny wants to talk about his legislation or
the question like about who decides whether a lawsuit is frivolous, like does that just go to the front of the line and then somebody says, nah, get that one out of here?
So that's also, I guess, a criticism of the legislation where there were some folks that said, well, we heard from the judicial branch that said they're overwhelmed with lawsuit. Yeah. Is this just going to add to the pile? At the same time, though, the concept of, well, you know what, Brian, big corporation Joe, I'm just going to sue you into oblivion and I'm just going to put you out of business. There are problems with that, clearly. It is also interesting that Senator Lenny talked about litigation tourism. For example, example, if you have standing to file a lawsuit in multiple states, you would probably opt for a state like Idaho that doesn't have these anti-SLAPP laws.
Okay.
It's a good point from the senator that might as well sue someone to oblivion that doesn't have anything on the law.
I think we pointed out before the success rate of Senator Lenny at the State House, not so good. But again, he keeps getting reelected.
Love to talk about it.
Thank you very much, Joe.
I think it's time for a rebellion, not just a please let us out of your state. No, I think it's time we need to put up a fence and say we'll live on this side, you stay on your side.
I guess that's kind of definition of a state border, isn't it? But there's a movement to move Idaho's border from those living in Oregon. And this rebellion, this Greater Idaho Rebellion, has been a vocal push by several conservative counties of the Beaver State to become part of the Gem State. We talked about it for several years. Since it began, 13 counties, mostly from the eastern and southern part of Oregon, have voted to have their county commissioners meet regularly to talk about it. And they have. But then last November, there was a push in Malheur County to stop those meetings since they really haven't amounted to anything. Except the voters in Oregon's largest county by land decided they didn't want to stop talking about it. And today they talked about it again with their county commissioners. Malheur County is one of 5 counties that has not sent a letter to the Oregon legislature to encourage lawmakers in Salem to address the Greater Idaho issue. And supporters want their 3-panel board to do at least that, because so far, while Idaho has introduced legislation twice to discuss the possibility of moving Idaho's border westward, both in 2022 and 2023, nothing has been considered or even mentioned in Salem.
People say how impossible it is to think about moving the border. I'm telling you, I think it'd be easier to move the border than it's going to be to change the legislature in the state of Oregon the way that it's made up right now.
So they spent about an hour hearing about how rules decided on in Salem, in the capital, don't apply to those living in rural eastern Oregon, including the recently reenacted Climate Protection Program. That's the one that wants to reduce carbon emissions from diesel, gasoline, and natural gas by 90% by the year 2050. They want to do it by 50% by the year 2035. It went back into effect the beginning of this year, which hasn't gone over well with farmers who rely on diesel tractors and trucks. Today's meeting just ended without a decision. So we reached out to see if the Malheur County Commissioners plan to write that letter to the lawmakers, but we've yet to hear back. We do know Malheur County Representative plans, that'd be Mark Owens, he plans to introduce a bill to ask for an investigation into what it would mean and what it would take to move Idaho's border. We do know it would take both state legislatures to agree to it, and then Congress has to consent, which has only happened a handful of times, although not significantly since 1959 when Alaska and Hawaii joined the Union. West Ada School District has 6 alternative schools for students who might have a harder time getting to graduation. Over the weekend, the district sent an email to the parents of these students to announce changes were coming to their schools, including shifting students to different buildings. Letter also says students at the alternative schools were going to have to split time, learning in person and learning online. Now, these changes won't happen immediately, not until the next school year. But as Aspen Shumpert found out, that doesn't make it any better for parents concerned about their students' mental health.
Major changes are coming to the West Ada School District's alternative schools, affecting hundreds of students across the Treasure Valley.
People see them as certain kind of kids, and so therefore we're just pushing them off to the side again.
Under the restructuring plan, Rebound and virtual schoolhouse students will move into the Treasure Valley Math and Science Center. The Treasure Valley Math and Science Center students will relocate to the current Central Academy building, while Central Academy students will be redistributed to the Eagle and Meridian Academy schools.
I was shocked because there was no parent meetings, there was no questions or how do you feel about this? It was just, this is what we're doing and deal with it.
In addition to the shifting, alternative students will split time between in-person and virtual learning every day. Erica Jones, a parent at one of these schools, says she's worried for her daughter's mental health with that schedule.
My concerns are, especially since COVID of 2020, it was proven through many reports and statistics that our kids became isolated. They weren't, social media went up, mental health went up, depression, anxiety, their grades plummeted down.
Jones is also concerned isolation will increase again and her daughter won't get a regular high school experience.
the dances, the assemblies, the school board, the extra activities, just the fun times you had during break with your friends. They're only there for 3 hours, and then you have an assembly or you have extra activities. Where would that fit in? If you need math and English and you really need to talk to the teachers about doing homework, when would you fit this in? I don't know how forcing them to be home is going to increase graduation rates.
Jones also feels like this change violates the district's discrimination policy.
Underneath the Disability Act, mental health, so anybody with depression, anxiety, substance abuse disorders, so anybody who has an addiction falls under that act. And I don't know how any of the kids in alternative schools that fall underneath that act are going to provide the same education as the majority. So to me, it's discrimination.
Jones is one of many families in the alternative schools that is hoping the district will reconsider.
They're not doing it to the Rocky Mountain kids. They're not doing it to the Centennial kids. They're not doing it to the Waihe kids. And so they already feel less than, and we're furthering that. I want the district to really think about, oh, we're forcing isolation on these kids, and it's not good. And a lot of them aren't going to graduate.
The district is holding an informational meeting right now with parents that start at 5 p.m. And the purpose of that meeting is to answer some of these questions and concerns that families are having. Now, KTV reporter Abby Davis is actually there in the room listening to this conversation. I just got off the phone with her, and she did approach the district. That was something the district wasn't open to, chatting with us prior to the meeting.
I was going to ask you.
We tried to do that, yep. And so Abby Davis is in the room right now and grabbed one of the district spokespersons who told her there's a little bit of a miscommunication happening. So at the beginning of that letter that we showed you that was sent out, said changes were coming. But the spokesperson for the district just told Abby Davis a final vote with the board has to happen in order for that to be approved. So it isn't final yet. Big miscommunication.
So they sent out a letter saying these changes are coming even though they have not been decided on by the board, which they're discussing and considering tonight.
Correct. And this is not a board meeting tonight. This is just a parent meeting to get feedback. So there won't be any vote or discussion on it formally tonight with the board. That'll come later.
Okay, but it's still an issue for some parents, and maybe they'll get that impression by hearing from them tonight.
That's right.
All right, thanks, Aspen. Remember the comics section of the newspaper? Well, they're still kind of going strong, but just like everything else, they're just mostly online. A look back at one of the pillars of the funny pages, produced right here in Boise. Looking to learn more about another Idaho icon, or really anything Idaho adjacent? We'd love to dig into it for you. You can also comment on anything we've talked about on today's show. Send us your message with your name and the hashtag #the208. Oh, the number? That's 208-321-5614. You know, gone are the days of the local newspaper being delivered to your door daily, where you might just snap it open over your bowl of Cheerios, see what Calvin Hobbes might be up to, maybe The Far Side or Lola. For example, today, Lola asked her Amazon Alexa to set an alarm for 5 a.m. because, well, she's got a busy day tomorrow. Well, then she says maybe make it 5:30, or better yet, 6. And second thought, 6, kind of like 7, so might as well make it 8. To which Alexa responds, how about I just let you sleep in? It's good stuff. And it's funny because Lola's an old lady who really doesn't have to live by a schedule. Yeah. And she's been the same old lady since 1999, when we first introduced you to the Boise-based artist behind Lola. That'd be Todd Clark. 6 years after that, we revisited Todd in his drawing room in his house, because at that point, Lola was published in papers worldwide, which meant people around the globe were being introduced to local Treasure Valley tidbits. Here's our 208 redial from 20 years ago today.
That's Lola.
She's the center of a comic strip that Boise cartoonist Todd Clark, along with co-creator Steve Dickinson, started nearly 6 years ago.
She's based on Steve's real live aunt. We like to say she's just quick to point out stupidity.
Which explains why the crusty character continues to point out these characters.
Looks like that Lola's hot.
The crank callers from the New Morning X.
Yeah, we do crank calls every day.
You guys do liposuction?
And every once in a while, they'll be on the other end of a joke.
It seems like every year or so I'll pick it up and there'll be an article about the X or the morning show.
Like this one from August 2003.
I like to listen to the New Morning X.
Or December 2002.
Are you excited to see corn?
Or just this week.
I think it's me with the hair on my chin. And the bloodshot eyes.
So what's Clark's connection to the X?
I don't know. Does he have a vendetta? I have no idea.
I don't know. Why not? Doesn't she look like an ex-listener?
Well, Todd is, which is why they sometimes make the funny papers.
There's no special bond. I just work them in when I can.
Along with other Boise-based memorabilia.
You know, I'm a huge diehard Boise State fan, so I'll put BSU on sweaters or banners and stuff like that.
How about other members of the media?
Yeah. Support your Channel 7.
Todd says it's not uncommon for cartoonists to showcase a little local flavor.
Oh yeah, I'll always do that. I'm hoping these guys will give me a free radio sometime, but they're not getting the hint.
But they are getting attention from Lola fans all across the country.
And they say that I actually look better when I'm drawn.
They're just not getting the jokes.
But will you please explain to me the Wizard of Id? I just don't get it. Lola! She gets me!
Brian Holmes, Idaho's News Channel 7. The Wizard of Id, is that still going? I don't know if it is either. Lola is still going strong today, even if it is just online. And Todd is still sneaking in some Boise-based Easter eggs, you may have noticed. Lola often seen wearing some sort of combination of blue and orange, as evidenced by the Sunday edition of This Week from yesterday, where she's seen hitting golf balls off the back deck, and then she says, we'll find them once the snow melts. And the dog says, that's not all you're gonna find? Yeah, we all know. We have dogs, we know. All right, more Californians might make their way to Idaho, but before you get upset about that, it's not what you think. It's for temporary emergency housing for people displaced by the wildfires in Southern California. Hunter Funk tells us more about it in today's 411.
I can't even imagine losing everything in a fire. You know, and if this will help them out a bit, that's what it's about.
First Choice Homestays is offering free emergency housing for 7 days in Idaho for anyone who's been evacuated or impacted by the California wildfires. The emergency housing includes a fully furnished house with Wi-Fi, cooking equipment, and utilities. After the 7 days, people can start renting if they want to stay. If you want to rent or offer your place to stay, call or text one of the numbers on your screen, or you can find a link on our website, ktvb.com. State employees, including lawmakers, could make a whopping $1.55 an hour more next year. The Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, or JFAC, recommended the 5% increase for next year's budget. This is the same as Governor Brad Little's state employee raise recommendation from his State of the State address last week. The raise still has to go through both the House and the Senate before it's approved. If you see low-flying helicopters north of Bliss and Gooding today, don't panic. The Idaho Department of Fish and Game says wildlife biologists are capturing and collaring elk calves. They say what they learn from those collars will help biologists understand elk movements and how their calves are surviving in the area. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Hunter Funk.
Well, we had a very brisk kickoff to this new work week, even though we had sunshine out there at times and above average temperatures in the Treasure Valley. That wind once again made it hard to enjoy the sunshine, but it does make for a beautiful sunset this evening. Here's a look at current conditions. We're down to 38 in Boise right now, near the freezing mark in Twin Falls and Sun Valley, where skies are clearing, already dipping down into the teens. So the clouds are moving out. We'll have a clear and cold evening. So this is what it feels like outside when you take our current temperature, you factor in the light winds. Feels like 31 in Boise, feels like 26 in Mountain Home. Over in the Magic Valley, you're enduring wind chills in the low 20s, and in Haley, it feels like 11 degrees. So that is the more important number this evening. Make sure you are really bundled up if you're heading out, especially after sunset in the next hour or two. All right, big picture look across the northwest. Just some clouds moving in from the north. Again, those will likely mostly clear out during the day tomorrow. We do have an air stagnation advisory that goes into effect tonight through Friday morning, as once again, a ridge of high pressure off to the west will continue inching eastward over the next several days, and that will lead to a weak inversion setup almost identical to what we saw last week. So as we look ahead to our Tuesday, frosty in the morning, clear and cold in the afternoon, upper 30s in Boise, and hey, that will be the case for several days in a row. No big changes day to day. So low temperatures tomorrow, low 20s around Nampa and Boise, into the teens for Mountain Home and Twin Falls, starting off in the single digits. Up in McCall, 10 for Sun Valley. Daytime highs tomorrow, upper 30s across the Treasure Valley. That is about on par with normal for this point in January. And as we check out our 7-day forecast, you can see that very little day-to-day change through Friday. Then late Friday into Saturday, we get a shot of Arctic air that will serve to scour out the inversion, but will also lead to likely the coldest temperatures we've seen so far this season. By Sunday morning, for the first time, we'll see temperatures in the teens in Boise. A cold but sunny MLK Jr. Day holiday next Monday.
All right, let's get to your comments for this Monday, like this one sent in from Rob, who is in Nampa, possibly Senator Brian Lenny's district. Wow, what a response. 3 words from Mr. Lenny. I'm glad he respects his constituents. Thanks for letting us know how busy you are, he says. Meanwhile, it seems like the phrase tonight about the Meridian District flyer on alternative schools, there was a lack of communication. Seems like that could be used to describe most problems in Idaho these days, says Steve. That's true, especially with social media. Wait, Idaho can provide free housing for California wildfire victims, but not the local homeless? I'm so confused, says Charlotte. Well, just to be clear, this is just a 7-day limit on this housing. Last time anybody could be homeless 7 days is pretty slim. It usually lasts longer than that. You want to learn more about this, you can check out the news at 6 coming up in about a half hour. We'll have more on it. Idaho legislators brag about being fiscally responsible, but we'll entertain an idea like Greater Idaho. So we take on nearly 50,000 square miles and like 20 taxpayers that don't believe in taxes. I can only imagine my taxes would increase to cover all the new infrastructure we'd be responsible for, says Paul. That's pretty true. That's kind of what people are worried about. Here's a thought. Why not divide Oregon into 2 states, East and West Oregon? Well, they tried something like this. Remember the state of Jefferson they wanted to create with lower part of Oregon and the northern part of California? Neither one of those has really moved at all. Do Oregon people know Idaho doesn't want them? Well, according to polling, 53% are kind of willing to listen to the idea. Even Governor Little has said it's a promising thought. Who wants a country in Idaho named Malheur? Look it up. The word in French, you won't like it. Doesn't mean misfortune. We do have a county named Teton, by the way.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.